Season is over, and on the program tonight, what a cast here. Former Texans wide receiver, author, and speaker J.J. Moses is here. Good to see you.
Thank you. We're so glad.
Yeah, and then Brandon Scott from SportsRadio 610, plus Zach Tawatari, Luis Ortiz. I don't know how we fit everybody here, but we did.
Yeah, it's pretty magical.
I'm just glad we didn't have a former lineman here. That would have been tougher.
Yeah.
No offense to any former linemen that are on the show. Anyhow, let's start with this final preseason game. All right, guys, how did it make you feel? And we use the emojis over on that board. So, JJ, how did the final preseason game make you feel?
Well, first of all, I'm going to take you guys over here. And
easy, don't hurt yourself.
Obviously, I'm not going to hurt myself. I'm still in a little shape right now. What I'm feeling right now, of course, we're thinking about praying hands. I don't see any praying hands, but what I'm going to do is circle this emoji right here because this has this eyes up, looking up to the heavens saying, thank you, God, for no serious injuries this year. Of course, preseason is a time where guys can get injured. Overall, we know C.J. Johnson was kind of injured, but it wasn't one of those injuries where we were like, oh, my goodness, we're going to lose him for the whole entire year. So I just have to do praying hands. Thank God that we're going to go into this regular season, everybody healthy. Let's go. We just got to get Joe Mixon back.
Yes, Brandon?
And see, I can appreciate how JJ went out of his way to reinterpret what the emojis even mean. That is a guy with some purpose right there. My emoji is also not here. I would go with the eye-looking emoji, but I'm going to go ahead and go with this one, because it looks like this is at least a curiosity emoji, and that's what I was going into this game. I was still curious, even though we knew that the main players weren't going to play. I was still curious on how the offense would run, how the backups would play, the guys that were fighting for a roster spot. That's what the final preseason game is all about, and so that's what you want to watch. And there were some guys that showed up. There were some guys that I thought were already going to make the team, like Woody Marks, who played well. Jaden Higgins, we saw him have a really good catch. But how about somebody like Tommy Togiai, guys that are on the edge of the roster that really showed up in this game? That's what I was seeing. So I'm going to have my hand on my chin a little bit, just curious what I might see in this game.
Nice.
Overall, I'm happy. Like JJ said, this team is healthy for the most part, at least as healthy as I think we could have hoped they would be going into the regular season. Now it's going to be time to see who makes this roster. It's going to be interesting to see. I like what Brandon said, but overall, I'm just happy to see that they made it out of the preseason without too many injuries.
Yes. Luis?
Yeah, well, I'm in between happy and unhappy. I'm this guy right here. Why? Because I'm just ready for the season to begin. The preseason is finally over, and I'm just kind of like, I mean, how much can you really take away? Yes, no injuries, but listen, in this final preseason game, we didn't really see the guys that are going to be key contributors playing, right? So we see a lot of the guys that are trying to make the team, as Brandon mentioned. So for me, it's like, okay, how much can you really make of what you saw in this game that's really going to apply in week one? That's when we're really going to see what the Texans have to bring to the table to begin this season.
All right, well, that was a good one, because I'm going to go right here as well, because, listen, you did not have your starters, or at least your main contributors in the game. And there was a stretch where the offense, they kept moving backwards with all of the penalties, which I can imagine was not a positive thing for DeMeco Ryans. So the good thing was no injuries, as JJ said, but I was just kind of, okay, yeah, I mean, it was the final preseason game. But because the preseason, listen, we know it's a month long, and there's always going to be guys who pop, who surprise. Which player was the biggest surprise from this training camp in your mind?
Oh, for me, I got to go with Braxton Berrios. I mean, this guy surprised a lot of, fans, of course. And, of course, with me being only 5'6", he's about 5'9". How do you not cheer for a guy? Of course, he's one of those underdogs. He's, of course, played football at Miami. But he's one of those guys, when I went to practice this year during training camp, I just noticed he had this juice. He had that factor. And, of course, playing at New England, he's going to fit right into Nick Caserio's whole scheme of just leadership. Players gravitate towards that.
Oh, by the way, he also returns kicks a little bit.
Yeah.
Does anybody know anything about that on this panel?
I think maybe Luis, you of us do. Well, he looks like a football player.
He did it once.
How about you, Brandon?
So I mentioned Tommy Togiai earlier, so I'm going to skip over him and go to the other side of the ball with Ariante Urser. I do want to point out that Tommy Togiai was somebody, the defensive tackle who DeMeco Ryans pointed out is the most consistent throughout training camp, so I do want to point that out. When we're talking about surprises, I got to go with the rookie Ariante Urser, just from the standpoint of it's a rookie. The offensive line troubles that the Texans have had for so long now, this is one of the answers to that. And who could foresee that he would not only be a perhaps starter at right tackle, but be their answer at left tackle when the guy that they paid $12 million, being Cam Robinson, went down with an injury. Ariante Ursary looks like he could very well be one of their best offensive linemen, if not the best, just based off of training camp.
Luis?
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go back to the wide receiver group, and I think Xavier Hutchinson has really surprised me. he really stepped up this training camp.
Iowa State over here, by the way, for those who don't know.
Listen, I mean, when you think about last season and what he was able to do, limited minutes, he had that one big play during the playoffs. Now, training camp, he comes in, and C.J. Stroud has actually mentioned it. He sees him playing with a lot of confidence. Yeah. He's talked about Xavier Hutchinson and say, I'm proud of him. I like the progress that he's made, the improvements. I was really surprised by that.
How about this one, guys? And I know this is really off the radar. And I thought, Togiai, that was one that popped in my head. How about Austin Brinkman? Oh. Long snapper. Because, listen, you had a guy who had been here for
almost 15 years.
20
years. I thought it was like 35. But anyhow,
35.
Close.
But when you saw him not in the game, the final preseason game, the snaps did not go that well. And he's been really good being a snapper for the first time for this team. So I'm going to say Austin Brinkman.
I think it's Woody Marks. He's done a pretty good job of quietly getting into the running back conversation. I don't know what we really expected out of him. I don't know what the Texans really expected out of him, being a 4th-round pick. I think it's kind of like a 50-50 chance that he ends up turning out to be a pro, ends up even making this team. But now,
oh really?
We're talking
you think
about
there's 50-50 chance to make the team?
Maybe with a 4th-round pick.
Ooh, I don't know.
I think so. I mean, you don't necessarily know. Running backs are hard to predict exactly what you're going to get out of them coming out of college. So I think all things considered, he's done a really good job of standing out and was a surprise in that sense for me.
50-50 chance?
No, Woody Marks was one of my favorite picks. You have to watch this guy at USC and even Mississippi State before that. He was a bell cow. I talked to Spencer Tillman at one of the practices that I was at, and he mentioned, man, outside of Ashton Gentry, the kind of the well-known running back from last year out of Boise State, this was one of the more consistent running backs in terms of production last year. I was expecting Woody Marks to make an impact. More than anything, I was surprised to see how much of an impact he made in that last preseason game. He was better than I thought he would be.
All right, there you go. So before we talk disappointments, it is now Saturday's drive of the game. And now we have to focus on the other side of the coin. Biggest disappointment during training camp? How about you, Brandon Scott?
So for me, this is one that can kind of just be a little bit of a catch-all, but it was the health, right? Like we didn't see Joe Mixon. And it's not like I need to see Joe Mixon in training camp. I know what Joe Mixon is about, but just the fact that he wasn't out there to me does not bode well for his chances of being ready for week 1 or potentially what his contributions might be if his foot is bothering that bad to where he can't participate in training camp. And of course, JJ mentioned earlier the CJ Gardner-Johnson injury that apparently isn't as bad as it looked originally, but still, that was a disappointment. And of course, Brevin Jordan having been lost for the season. And of course, he missed most of last season with an injury, a similar injury. That was really tough to watch. So I was glad to see at the end of the preseason that they got out of there without the injuries, but during training camp, that was pretty disappointing to see.
I'm all about Joe Mixon as well. To me, the fact that he wasn't out there, that was a big disappointment. Much like you said, we know what Joe Mixon is, but this is a new offense and et cetera, et cetera. I would have liked to have seen Joe Mixon out there. Do you have something different?
No, I actually got to agree with you guys because whenever you miss a guy like a Joe Mixon, God had 1,000 yards rushing, 12 touchdowns last year. This guy's a key component to the Texans offense. So hopefully, no one knows, again, the severity of his injury. When is his timetable? When will Joe Mixon get back into playing shape? So we'll see.
What about Blake Fisher, a guy that we expected to be a big part of this newly revamped offensive line coming into his second year, and now it doesn't look like he's really going to have a spot, especially on that starting line specifically. So, a disappointment in seeing that. It seemed like he actually regressed a little bit. I know he had some good reps in some of the preseason games, but overall, a little disappointed in what we saw from him.
It's a good one. It's a good one. Luis?
Yeah, I'm going to cast a wide net and sort of contradict myself, but I'm going to say the whole running backs group. One, because I think throughout training camp, we really didn't see one guy really stand out. Brandon, you were kind of talking about this during the break, right? Where you said, I didn't really see for the most part a guy that was like, okay, he makes the team for sure. Until, Woody Marks did score that touchdown in the preseason finale that he looked really well, making that defensive tackle miss, making that cut, and then, running 9 yards into the end zone. But outside of that, I don't think any guy really impressed. When you talk about Kalen Bullock, who had an amazing training camp, right? And the type of plays that you saw him doing during practice. Same thing with, on the offense, Xavier Hutchinson, we talked about him. Running backs, I didn't really see anything explosive out of them.
And I think with Coach Beard, he's the running backs coach for the Texans.
Yep.
And I think he's going to do an excellent job of developing these running backs. And hopefully there can be a 1-2 punch, but he's got a lot on his hands, and we'll see what Coach Beard does this season, man.
Cutdown day is Tuesday, 3 p.m. our time. Which position group will be the most difficult to slice, or is it the running back group for you, Luis?
That is, actually it is, yeah, because look, the uncertainty of Joe Mixon, we don't know what's going to happen with him, right? So I think you kind of pencil in now Nick Chubb as the starter. Who's going to back him up? Is it Dameon Pierce? Is it Woody Marks, or the rookie? Then you got British Brooks, who maybe is in the cut for special teams. Is it Jordan? What other guy? You kind of have a lot of questions there that it's kind of difficult to say how many running backs do we keep on the roster and who is the one that we let go.
I think with the receiver core, man, obviously that's a big time position where you just don't know. And of course with Mechie leaving out, and then you got the emergence with our Iowa State guys. You got Noel, Hutchinson, Xavier, all those guys. And then of course Nico Collins, who's going to solidify this group. But I think the wide receiver core, it can go in so many different directions, but I think that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I got to agree with both of those. I think those are both fine candidates. I'll go just to be a little different, go back to that defensive tackle position.
Yep.
I don't want to give Togiai a little bit more shining than what he necessarily deserves this preseason, but I do think he kind of forced the issue in the numbers game that exists at that position. I would have gone into this preseason thinking that Mario Edwards and Sheldon Rankins and Foley Fatukasi were kind of etched in stone. And now I'm not exactly sure because Togiai has forced the issue. Tim Settle is somebody who I thought would have been perhaps on a bubble. I can't imagine this team not having Tim Settle on it. So at some point, something is going to have to give. There are more bodies than there are spots. And so I think that's going to be a really tough position to cut.
Defensive tackle came to my mind. What about you?
I think it's also the running backs for me because when you have a position where you don't have that clear starter because of the fact that Joe Mixon is still out with his injury, I think it kind of dilutes the rest of the guys who are there in the sense that they're all maybe closer to the same level of skill than in other groups. So without having that clear-cut starter, I think now you're looking at the Gerard Jordan, Stare Ogunbowale, British Brooks. These are guys who are maybe similar in terms of skill level and what they can do, and it makes it harder to make that decision. Hey, this is who we have on the team, and this is who ends up getting cut.
Well, we are almost ready for football. Actually, we are ready for football. The Texans still have some decisions to make. We have Brandon Scott from Sports Radio 610, former Texan J.J. Moses, author, speaker. Both of you guys, thank you so much for being with us tonight on Sports Extra.
Thanks for having us.
Let's go Texans.